Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. What you're about to hear wasn't meant for anyone. Not my friends. Not my family. Definitely not my ex-wife. But since I was forced to live it, you might as well hear it. The moment the doors opened and I heard the clink of glasses, I knew I had made a mistake. No, not just any mistake. A full, body-cringing, soul-choking, regret so deep it tastes like battery acid kind of mistake. The kind of mistake you don't walk away from clean. The kind you carry in your chest like a splintered rib. You see, the only reason I went to this annual partner networking mixer was because my new manager, Glenn, who wears sunglasses indoors and calls PowerPoint slides battle decks, told me I needed to be seen. That's ironic. Because that night, I was seen. By the last person on this earth I ever wanted to see me. 3 years ago, I vanished. Not in a cool, mysterious way. More like a weeping, box-packing, please don't do this, way. I shut off the lights in my marriage, in my home, in myself, and walked out before she could finish saying, this isn't working. I went silent. Deleted my socials. Left the city. Changed my job. I started over like I'd never existed. And I was doing okay. Kind of. I still talk to walls sometimes. Still got this weird flutter in my stomach every time someone said her name, which thankfully wasn't often. How many women do you know named Fern? But at that mixer, none of that mattered. Because she was there. I was halfway through pretending to sip warm Chardonnay and avoiding eye contact with the CEO when I turned, and there she was. Laughing. Talking. Standing in heels I used to trip over in the hallway at 2 a.m. She was older. Not visibly. Just, heavier with silence, somehow. And then, she noticed me. No slow build. No dramatic walk-up. No fake smile. Her face dropped like a piano out a window. And before anyone could react, before she even said my name, she fell. Right there. In a ballroom full of catered food and business cards. Flat onto the floor. Shaking. Sobbing. Saying words no one could make out, but I knew. I knew. She was trying to apologize. Or explain. Or undo everything with her mouth because time sure wasn't helping her anymore. And I just stood there. Holding a plate of roasted squash and goat cheese medallions. Watching her collapse like a tower of regret. Feeling every stare in the room melt my skin. You ever feel humiliated by someone else's pain? Because I did. But it's what happened after the collapse that changed everything. And that's where this story really begins. I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to, believe me, but my body wasn't listening to my brain. I just stood there, frozen, like some pathetic statue with a paper plate in one hand and 100 memories in the other. The entire room swarmed around her like bees to a fallen queen, but all I could focus on was the sound she made when she saw me. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a gasp. It was this raw, broken sound, like a sob that had been held hostage in her chest for years. I knew I should walk away. Slip out quietly. But my feet might as well have been cemented to the floor. I couldn't stop staring. I guess part of me needed confirmation, that she was real, that this wasn't some messed up nightmare or grief hallucination. But it was real. Too real. The emergency responders showed up after 10 minutes. Someone said she was hyperventilating. Others whispered she fainted. Everyone speculated. No one asked me. By the time they wheeled her out on a stretcher, she was conscious but dazed. And the moment they passed me, her eyes locked onto mine again. There was no mistaking the message behind that look. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't guilt. It was something worse. Recognition. The kind that comes too late, when everything that could have been said has already been buried under years of silence. I left through the back. I walked all the way home, even though it was freezing. I needed the cold. I needed it to feel like something, anything, other than what I was feeling. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't over. That look on her face. It didn't say goodbye. It said unfinished. And I was right. At 2:17 a.m., I got a message. No name. No subject. Just a number I didn't recognize and a single line of text. I never stopped thinking about you. Please. Just one conversation. My heart sank. I stared at that message for a long time. Long enough to replay every miserable moment from our last year together, the deflections, the lies, the work trips, the nights she came home smelling like hotel soap and foreign cologne. And that one awful Tuesday when I finally admitted out loud that she had stopped loving me, and she just blinked. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. Sleep was impossible after that. I kept tossing, turning, arguing with my ceiling. One half of me was screaming, "Don't even think about it, Merritt. She left you to rot." The other half was whispering, "What if she's finally sorry? What if she regrets it all?" You know what's worse than heartbreak? False hope. The next morning, I woke up to 4 more messages. Each one a little longer. The last one said, "I shouldn't have come to the mixer. I didn't know you'd be there. But seeing you, it undid me. You look older. Sadder. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I hoped you'd be angry. But you looked at me like I was nothing. And I deserved it. But I still need you to know, it wasn't what you think. Not entirely. Not entirely." That phrase bounced around in my head like a fly in a bottle. What does that even mean? Did she not cheat? Did she kind of cheat? Was she gaslighting me again, or was this something else? I didn't know. I just sat there, rereading the messages, heart pounding, palms sweating like I was back in high school holding a rejection letter. But then came the message that changed everything. A file. A single file attachment. No explanation. No preview. Just the words. "Please watch this. It's the only truth I have left." And now I was no longer debating whether I should reply. I was staring at a ticking emotional grenade, unsure whether opening it would blow up the last 3 years of healing, or finally give me the closure I never got. I hovered over it. Clicked. Paused. Clicked again. Nothing happened. My hands were shaking. I refreshed. It finally loaded. And what I saw in that video? It's going to take everything in me to describe. The video started with shaky hands. It was clear whoever was recording didn't plan to. You could hear breathing. Nervous, shallow, unsteady. Then a hotel room came into frame, one I didn't recognize. Dim lighting, beige curtains, a nightstand with a half-drunk glass of wine. At first, I thought it was some random clip, maybe something she shot by accident or saved for some twisted memory. But then I heard her voice. Not current her. Past her. That bubbly, upbeat tone I hadn't heard since she used to call me Mary, just to get under my skin. I hadn't realized how much I missed that voice until I heard it again, and suddenly, it made me nauseous. She was off camera. "Okay, so I hit record," she said, laughing nervously. "This is insane. We're actually doing it." Then a male voice answered, lower, confident, too smooth. "You sure?" he asked. And suddenly, like a punch to the chest, he stepped into the frame. It was him. The guy from the photos. The one I'd only ever seen in fragments, tagged in her old office parties, blurry in the background of some travel pic she forgot to scrub before posting. Grant. The man she left me for. He walked into view, wearing a hotel robe and holding a bottle of something expensive. He looked comfortable. Familiar. Like this wasn't the first time. Like it was routine. That's when I understood exactly what I was watching. It was a video diary. They were documenting the beginning of their story, while mine was still falling apart. The next 15 minutes were brutal. I watched them giggle, toast to their new chapter, kiss on camera like they were starring in their own romance movie. She talked about how she couldn't keep living a lie, and how Merritt will be okay, he always is, he's so soft, he'll move on. Soft. That word hit harder than any insult. She said it like it was something to pity. Like kindness was a disease I never got over. She kept saying how I deserved someone gentler, how I cared too much, too often, about the wrong things. Grant didn't even pretend to sympathize. He smirked the whole time. Made a joke about how I probably had a spreadsheet of date nights planned through the next decade. And she laughed. That warm, stupid laugh that used to be my favorite sound in the world. But then, something changed. Around the 16-minute mark, the vibe shifted. The camera shook. The lighting darkened. The smiles faded. She was crying. "I think I made a mistake," she said, rubbing her face. "You told me it'd feel right, that it would feel like freedom. But I miss him. I miss the way he looked at me when I walked in the room. I miss knowing I was safe." Grant looked annoyed. "You're just scared because it's new," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm scared because I ruined someone who actually loved me. Merritt wasn't perfect, but he would have taken a bullet for me. And I ghosted him. Like he was nothing." She paused. Then added the part that wrecked me. "He was the only person who ever listened to me without trying to fix me. And I left him for someone who only hears what he wants." The video cut off after that. No explanation. No ending. Just that. It took me a while to move. I sat there for what felt like hours, the screen black, my reflection staring back at me, tired, older, angrier than I'd ever let myself be. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself cry. Ugly cry. The kind of cry where you clutch your stomach like it's trying to escape the guilt it's been carrying. But even through the tears, one question screamed louder than the rest. Why now? Why, after all this time, send me this? Why break down in front of everyone? Why open the wound she left to rot? I didn't have answers. Only questions, and one unread message that popped up minutes after the video ended. From her. It said, "If you saw the video, then you know. But there's more. You never knew what really happened after I left." And below that, another file. A second video. I stared at it. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about truth, the messy, disgusting, too late truth I didn't know if I was strong enough to hear. But I clicked anyway. And what I saw next shattered the little clarity I had left. The second video began with silence, no voices, no laughter, no giddy anticipation. Just the soft hum of an air conditioning unit and the faint rustle of bedsheets. The timestamp was nearly a year after the first recording. I could tell right away, this wasn't meant for romance. This wasn't some glorified memory capsule. This was confession. Aileen sat on the edge of a bed in a dimly lit room, phone propped up on a chair across from her. No makeup. Hair tied messily. She looked thinner, paler, but not in a dramatic, cinematic way. Just tired. Like her body had finally caught up with all the things her heart had been trying to ignore. She didn't speak right away. She looked straight into the camera like it was a courtroom, and the jury was already halfway out the door. Then she said it, the words that made my throat close. "I lied to you, Merritt. About everything. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just can't carry it anymore." She inhaled shakily and pressed her palms against her knees like she needed physical anchoring. Grant was never supposed to be permanent. He was supposed to be an escape hatch. From the guilt. From the resentment. From you. And that's the part one hate the most, that I resented someone who did nothing but love me completely. She looked away then. A long pause. You could tell this wasn't rehearsed. You used to ask me if I was happy. And I'd say, I'm fine. God, I must have said that 1,000 times. But I wasn't. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I wasn't stronger. That I couldn't love you the way you loved me. That your gentleness made me feel like a fraud. I swallowed hard. That wasn't what I expected. Not even close. She continued. You weren't weak. You were stable. I just confused calm with boring. I mistook kindness for passivity. And instead of talking to you, I found someone who made noise. Who chased thrills. Who made me feel like I was the unpredictable one, even if it meant burning everything else down. Then her voice cracked. She lowered her eyes. But Grant wasn't just a mistake. He was poison. And I drank all of it because I thought that would make me feel alive again. I didn't tell you what happened after I left because I didn't want you to know you were right about him. She leaned closer, the camera framing her face with raw honesty. 3 months in, he started pulling away. Got bored. Told me I was too emotional. Sound familiar? Then I found out he was still married. He never left her. I was just his thrill. His side story. Tears began to stream down her cheeks now, but she didn't flinch. She kept going. When I found out, I wanted to call you. I had the phone in my hand. But then I saw the damage I'd caused. You'd disappeared. No online footprint, no mutual contacts. You didn't even leave a trail. I realized I didn't just lose you, I made sure there was no version of you left that I was allowed to know. She wiped her eyes, trying to hold it together. I was so angry when I saw you last night. Not because you ignored me, but because you looked okay. You looked like a man who didn't need the apology anymore. And that terrified me. Then, just before the video ended, she said one final thing, and it cracked the last little piece of armor I had left. You once told me that even if I walked away, you'd still root for my happiness. And I spat on that. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I do need you to know. I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to show it without destroying everything. The screen went black. I sat motionless, trembling from the inside out. I felt like someone had dug their hands into my chest and rearranged everything, grief, anger, vindication, confusion, all tangled into one impossible knot. She didn't ask me to reply. She didn't beg. She didn't send a follow-up message. But that silence. It was louder than anything else. And now I had a decision to make. Do I engage? Do I open a wound that might never close? Or do I finally, truly, walk away? I didn't have an answer yet. But I knew where I was going. I reached into the back of my closet, pulled out the box I hadn't touched in 3 years. Inside it were 3 things: our wedding vows, the photo from our trip to Vancouver, and a letter I never gave her, the one I wrote the night after she left. And as I unfolded that letter, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. This story wasn't over yet. I never meant to keep the letter. That night she left, I wasn't thinking clearly. I remember sitting on the couch, staring at the front door for hours after it closed behind her. I didn't cry right away. That came later. At first, I just sat there like an abandoned object. Like some forgotten coat rack no one wanted anymore. I reached for a pen and started writing, not because I thought she'd read it, but because I needed to pour the words somewhere before they started rotting inside me. I never sent it. I folded it up, put it in a small box along with our wedding photo and that ridiculous clay ring holder she made for me in pottery class. The one shaped like a turtle with crooked eyes. I kept it all in the back of my closet like emotional landmines. I couldn't bear to throw it out. But I couldn't bear to look at it either. Until now. As I unfolded the paper, the creases felt like bones, fragile, familiar, a little bitter. The ink had faded in places from where my hands shook too much that night. But the words were still there, raw and broken. Dear Aileen. I don't know why I'm writing this. You're not coming back. You made that clear. But I have to say it, or I'll carry it forever. I don't hate you. That's the worst part. I wish I did. It would be easier. Cleaner. But I still love you, even now, even after you turned me into a stranger in my own house. You used to say I felt everything too deeply. Maybe you were right. Maybe that's my flaw, or maybe it's the only real thing about me. You said I was soft. You're right again. I was soft. For you. With you. I bent until I snapped, and you didn't even hear the sound. I hope someday you realize that you weren't unloved. You were loved completely. Messily. Desperately. I hope someone gives you that again, and I hope this time you don't run from it. Merritt. I read it twice. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt this strange kind of weight settle on my chest, not grief, not rage, but pause. Like a part of me had been holding its breath for 3 years and finally exhaled. And that's when the impulse hit me. I got in my car. I didn't even know where she lived now, but I knew her old friend Dana still worked at the downtown florist, the one with the giant wooden flamingo outside. I hadn't spoken to Dana since the wedding. I wasn't even sure she'd talk to me. But I drove there anyway, parked across the street, and watched through the window like some unshaven, emotionally suspect stalker. To my surprise, she noticed me immediately. Her jaw dropped. She came outside before I could even get out of the car. Merritt, she asked, stunned. What the hell? I'm not here to cause trouble, I said quickly. I just need to give Aileen something. That's it. Then I'm gone. She studied me for a second, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. I expected her to scold me, to tell me to leave her alone. But then, her expression softened. Like maybe she saw what Aileen had destroyed. She moved in with her sister in Meridian, Dana finally said. She doesn't really talk to anyone anymore. Please, I said, holding up the letter. Just make sure she gets this. Dana took it. No promise. No handshake. She just nodded once and walked away. I should have felt closure after that. But I didn't. I felt more unsteady than ever, like I'd just passed a torch I wasn't sure I wanted to extinguish. And the worst part? Aileen didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Not even the week after. I told myself that was fine. That I did what I needed to do. That this was finally the end. But then 2 weeks later, at 4:12 in the morning, I woke up to a single buzz on my phone. One message. One photo. It was my letter, burned at the edges, sitting on a kitchen table, beneath it a coffee mug I hadn't seen in years. It was mine. The blue one that said, "World's Softest Man." And her caption. You think I don't deserve your words. But I've read them 27 times. Come see what I did with them. I wish I could say I hesitated. That I stood at my front door for hours with keys in hand, trying to decide whether to go. That I paced the floor and debated with myself, weighing caution against curiosity, maturity against madness. But the truth? I got dressed and left in under 5 minutes. There was something in that photo that reached deeper than the messages or the videos. That mug, that stupid mug, I hadn't seen it since she threw it across the room during our final argument, shattering it like it had dared to hold too many memories. I assumed she tossed it. I assumed she tossed everything. But there it was, somehow whole, sitting next to a burned letter I never expected her to read, let alone preserve. And her words, "Come see what I did with them," they weren't just a message. They were a dare. A doorway. And even though every rational part of me screamed "don't do this," I went anyway. Meridian is only 40 minutes from Boise, but the drive felt like crossing into another lifetime. The address Dana had written on a napkin led me to a quiet cul-de-sac of modest single-story homes tucked behind a row of pine trees. Everything was still. Not eerie, just deliberate, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. I parked a few houses down and walked the rest of the way, letter-thin nerves unraveling with every step. Her sister's house had peeling white shutters and a porch light flickering like it was struggling to stay present. Before I could even knock, the door opened. Aileen stood there barefoot, wearing an oversized hoodie and pajama pants. Her hair was up, glasses slightly crooked, as if I had caught her mid-thought. She looked like someone who'd been up all night, and someone who didn't expect I'd actually come. We stared at each other in the doorway for too long. Then she quietly said, "Come in. Please." The house smelled like cinnamon and something citrusy, maybe orange peels in boiling water, something comforting but unfamiliar. I followed her through a narrow hallway into a small kitchen where the photo had been taken. The table was cleared now, except for a small ceramic bowl and a notebook, my handwriting peeking from between its pages. I didn't sit. I couldn't. My body was vibrating with too many questions. "What is this?" I finally asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a box. She opened it gently and tilted it toward me. Inside were scraps. Pieces of our life, literal, physical pieces. Torn-up ticket stubs from our first trip to Seattle. A grocery list in my handwriting with a heart doodled at the top. The corner of a birthday card I thought she'd thrown away. And tucked beneath all of that, a photo, one I'd never seen before, of me asleep on the couch, holding our old cat, Basil, my head tilted at an angle I didn't know anyone had captured. I was speechless. "I kept everything," she said, voice low but steady. "Even when I told myself I didn't care. Even when I convinced myself you hated me." I looked at her then, truly looked at her, and I saw something I hadn't expected. She didn't look proud. She looked exhausted, like she'd been surviving off shame for years and finally wanted to breathe something else. "I burned the letter," she continued, "but not to destroy it. I framed the ashes." I blinked. "You, what?" She gestured to the wall behind me. I turned, and there it was, a glass shadow box, inside it the crumbled, scorched remnants of the letter I'd written her, mounted against a background of faded sheet music. The piece? Clair de Lune. It was the song we danced to alone the night after our wedding. I'd forgotten. But she hadn't. "I've read every line of that letter more times than I can count," she said, her voice cracking. "I memorized the way you said I was soft, like it was both a wound and a blessing. I don't deserve another chance, Merritt. I know that. But I couldn't pretend anymore that I moved on. Because I didn't. I felt 1,000 things at once. Rage. Grief. Longing. And under all of it, this unbearable weight of knowing that she wasn't lying. Not now. But before I could say anything, she added one more sentence. One that pulled the rug out from beneath everything I thought I knew. "You never knew the full reason I left. It wasn't just Grant. It wasn't just the boredom. It was something I kept from you. Something I thought would break you if you found out." I took a step back, my stomach hollowing. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She looked down, hands clenched into fists. "I was pregnant, Merritt. And I didn't know who the father was." Silence. Actual, terrifying silence. The room didn't spin. It collapsed. Everything I thought this was, a failed marriage, a bad decision, betrayal, loneliness, it had all just cracked open to reveal a deeper rot I never saw coming. I turned toward the door. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel. Behind me, I heard her whisper, "Wait. Please. That's not the end of it." But I was already halfway out the door. Because whatever truth she was about to tell me next, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go home either. I ended up parked in a grocery store lot, engine off, phone face down, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to earth. I watched delivery trucks pull in and out of the loading dock for hours, watching people move through life with purpose while I sat there unraveling like wet rope. Pregnant. She was pregnant. And she didn't know who the father was. And she didn't tell me. Not then. Not ever. I had spent 3 years mourning the death of a marriage, and now, out of nowhere, I was mourning the ghost of a child I never got the chance to know existed. I couldn't cry. I think I'd exhausted whatever emotional reservoir I had left. But there was a hollowness in my chest that felt like it could swallow the entire car. And beneath all of it was one haunting question: why now? Why confess this now? By morning, my limbs felt like they belonged to someone else. I didn't even realize I'd driven back until I saw her sister's porch in my headlights again. I hated myself for coming back. But I hated the idea of not knowing more even worse. She opened the door before I could knock. No makeup this time. Just swollen eyes and a bandaged thumb. I later found out she'd broken a glass after I left. She didn't say, "Hi." Just stepped aside and let me in. We sat in silence for a few minutes at that same kitchen table, the ghost of last night's conversation still floating between us like smoke. Then, finally, she spoke. "I was 7 weeks along when I found out. I didn't tell you because I thought I'd already ruined us. And part of me was terrified it wasn't yours." My voice was hoarse when I answered. "And was it?" She stared at her hands, trembling. "I don't know." That 3-word sentence landed like a wrecking ball in the center of the room. But she didn't stop there. I scheduled an appointment to terminate. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Grant. I told myself it was mercy, mercy for you, mercy for the baby, mercy for whatever version of myself still believed I could be a good person. But the truth? She looked up at me then, eyes bloodshot but steady. I was just afraid. Afraid of having to look at a child and wonder every single day if they were the proof of the worst mistake I ever made. I wanted to yell. To scream. To stand and flip the table and ask her what gave her the right to choose silence over honesty. But all I could do was whisper, "You should have told me." She nodded. "I know. I've lived with that sentence in my head every day since." And then she told me the part that broke something in me I didn't even know was still intact. I miscarried. It was the tone that did it, flat, restrained, like she'd rehearsed it so many times that she didn't know how to say it with emotion anymore. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to comfort her, or if I even should. I just sat there, staring at the cracks in the tabletop, while she exhaled years of buried shame into the still air around us. "I went through it alone," she said. "Grant never knew. You never knew. My sister helped me to the hospital and back. And for a long time, I thought I deserved that. The pain. The blood. The silence. I thought it was punishment for choosing chaos over calm." And then she said something I never expected. Not from her. "I loved you, Merritt. I really did. But I was never taught how to sit still with love. I only knew how to chase the parts that burned." We sat for what felt like forever. 2 people surrounded by the debris of what might have been. Not speaking. Not touching. Just breathing the same air like it might be the last time. Eventually, I stood to leave. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say anything. But just as I reached the door, she said one final thing, so soft I almost missed it. There's one more thing I need to show you. I turned. She pulled a small envelope from the counter and handed it to me. Inside was a letter. Dated a month before the company mixer, before she saw me and collapsed in that hotel ballroom. It read, "I don't expect you to ever forgive me. But I need to tell you what I've done. Not for redemption, just for truth. I'm mailing this to your old address in case some part of the universe thinks I deserve even that much of a chance." It was her original confession. Written before she even knew I was alive in the same state. I had spent 3 years building a wall so tall that I never realized she had tried, quietly, imperfectly, but genuinely, to break through it. She hadn't sent it, maybe out of fear, maybe because she thought it wouldn't matter. But now it did. I left without saying a word, the letter clutched in my fist, my stomach knotted with emotions too complicated to name. This wasn't closure. It was something messier. More real. And I still hadn't decided what I was going to do with it. It's strange, how something so broken can still echo beauty when you least expect it. I spent the next few days walking in circles, literally and emotionally. I'd take long routes home from work, pass by unfamiliar blocks, drink too much coffee, listen to old playlists I hadn't touched in years. I'd read the letter again and again, each time hearing her voice a little clearer, each line peeling away another layer of resentment I'd been gripping like armor. And eventually, I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote her back. Not through text. Not through email. I handwrote it. 2 full pages. I didn't hold back, but I didn't lash out either. I told her how it felt to be left, how I had rotted quietly for years wondering what I did wrong, and how cruel it was to watch someone I loved hand my place to someone else like it was just another item on a list of things to upgrade. But I also told her something I didn't realize until I sat down to write: I was okay now. Not in a fairy tale, look at me now, kind of way. Just, genuinely okay. I had rebuilt myself with shaky hands and mismatched parts, but I'd done it. I'd become someone who could look in the mirror and not flinch. Someone who didn't need revenge, or drama, or answers he'd never get. Someone who understood that sometimes people break things not because they don't love them, but because they don't know how to love them. And I told her something else. If you're ever willing to meet again, with no expectations, no pressure, just as 2 people who once knew each other in a way the world can't understand, I'll be there. 2 weeks later, I found a postcard in my mailbox. No envelope. Just a photo of the Vancouver pier where we'd once taken a rainy walk and talked about someday owning a tiny bookstore. On the back, written in her small, slanted handwriting, were 4 words. Let's walk again, slowly. I met her that Sunday. Same pier. Same clouds. A little more gray in our hair. A little more gravity in our silence. And a lot more honesty in the way we stood beside each other. We didn't kiss. We didn't rewind time. We didn't pretend everything could be fixed with one conversation. But we did walk. And for now, that's enough. Thanks for sticking with this story all the way to the end. If you've ever had someone from your past reappear in an unexpected way, whether it ended in healing or chaos, share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear how it unfolded for you. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where the messiest stories sometimes find the softest endings. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Until next time.